Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tip Today, and it's time now for Global News. I'm glad to be joined as always by Thomas Conway from the Nina Guardian. Good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Frank.
Good to see you today. Can we start with the Epstein files and the latest cache of them that have been released, and a lot of careers in doubt after this?
He continues to haunt people from beyond the grave. I've never seen a person with such ramifications for others. The latest, the Clintons, both Hillary and Bill Clinton, the former president, have agreed to testify before Congress. Yeah. They were coming under a lot of pressure.
After saying they wouldn't.
And I think it's because this latest cache of files, 3 million of them, I think, have shed new light. And it is important to say that people, analysts are still pouring through the files and pouring through what we can learn from them. Pretty damning as well for Peter Mandelson, the former UK government minister. He was ambassador to the US last year. Keir Starmer appointed him, and that has raised questions anew regarding Keir Starmer's judgment, and particularly the judgment of his Irish-born Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who is the Chief of Staff in Downing Street.
Macroom, isn't he?
He's from Macroom in County Cork originally, rose up through the Labour Party, and apparently heavily encouraged Starmer to appoint Mandelson as ambassador to the States.
Even though they knew at that stage that he had met with Epstein.
But Mandelson, of course, strenuously denied any impropriety. But these new revelations, I mean...
Some of those photographs.
Some of the photographs are particularly embarrassing for him, but perhaps more serious than the photographs is the revelation that he may have leaked government information to Epstein. Now, that is a whole new ballgame.
And he was in... Would you just explain the position he was in at that stage?
He was he business secretary at the time?
Wasn't he?
He was in the UK government at the time. And he was reportedly leaked sensitive details to Epstein, who, alongside all this activity that we're learning, was also a financier and would have heavy links to Wall Street and stuff like that. So would be paying close attention to the markets, and if he got government information regarding the selling of bonds, whatever, that's pretty serious. I mean,
the other one, George Mitchell, of course.
That is a real that's an astonishing, and I suppose caution people not to judge without all the information, because obviously that scholarship in Northern Ireland and the bust of him in Queen's University will be taken down. I think we have to wait for more information on that one.
Well, just all the good and positive stuff that he did where the Good Friday Agreement was concerned, and it's...
it is, and that just highlights, whoever Epstein touched, wherever the man went, he tainted people. He was, obviously he was a sexual predator, a child sex offender. People should have known better. But the files, we will see as more revelations come to light in the coming days.
It'll be very, very interesting indeed. So after a year in the wilderness, the Democrats, Thomas, you're saying, are they finding their way now?
I think they're cautiously. I mean, it's been a whirlwind of a year because of Donald Trump and all that he has done. Yeah. I think the Democrats are cautiously finding their way back. I think those elections prior to the turn of the year, the November off-year elections, were, if not a turning point, a significant moment. So you had two Democrats with a lot of potential, Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill in Virginia and New Jersey, respectively. Both won their congressional seats. Now, they were both elected way back in the last Democratic wave in 2018. The fact that they retained their seats and retained them comfortably against Republican opposition was a good sign for the Democrats. And Spanberger and Sherrill are seen as, maybe down the line, potential presidential candidates. They come from a national security background. strong on law and order and relatively centrist. You then had the victory of Zoran Mamdani in the New York mayoral contest. That was a coup for those on the further to the left of the Democratic Party. Now, I don't think Mamdani is the kind of candidate that's going to defeat a Republican in a 2028 presidential election. I think it would have to be a more moderate centrist. But there are those figures are out there too. And the Democrats have kind of scored a number of impressive victories in places like Kentucky. Well, not victories, but have performed well in places like Kentucky and what would be considered red states. And the looks are, or the signs are, that maybe, just maybe, they are turning a corner.
So what about the Senate then?
So they're down. The current composition of the Senate, the Republicans have 51 seats, the Democrats have 47. So in order to flip the Senate in the blue direction, in the Democratic direction, the Dems would have to win 4 seats. Now that's
is that well, they'd have to hold on to everything they have.
They'd have to hold on to everything they have.
Win 4
yeah,
seats, right.
1/3 of the Senate is elected every 2 years. So there's 33 seats up for grabs, 33, 34. Yeah, it's eminently possible. I mean, I've looked at a couple of the races. They're polling relatively well, but it would have to be. They would have to really perform very, very well in order to flip the Senate. And the House is up for grabs. All the seats in the House up for grabs every 2 years. That would be very interesting to observe how that plays out. I reckon Republicans, I probably think they will retain the House, whatever happens in the Senate. But make no mistake about it, this midterm election, as is always the case, will be viewed kind of as a referendum on Trump's presidency or in his second term so far.
I heard a conversation over the weekend. I'd love your opinion on it, because some people figure that this will clip Trump's wings in some fashion if the midterms turn against him. Other people over the weekend making the point, no, this could make him even more dangerous, really, in terms of executive orders. Yeah,
it could embolden him further. I can see where they're coming from there, because, I mean, I've made the point before how Trump has kind of expanded presidential power, expanded the limits of presidential power to an unprecedented degree, really. And I would expect he will use executive orders in a similar fashion in the second half of his term. He's already utilised more executive orders, I think, than in the entirety of his first term. As I said, it's been a whirlwind, and a lot of his actions have been carried out via executive orders. Now, he will, the big legislative moves he needs, where for instance, spending is concerned, Capitol Hill controls spending for the most part. They're in charge of the purse strings. So he will need congressional approval in terms of spending and stuff like that. So, it's still significant who controls the House and who controls the Senate. But certainly I can see how it would embolden him. And, Trump has broken all sorts of norms, all sorts of precedents. It's hard to know what is coming. But certainly after the midterm elections, generally, for a second-term president, the focus kind of switches and suddenly the president becomes yesterday's man.
Yes.
I'm not sure will that happen.
A lame duck.
A lame duck president. I don't know, will Trump allow that to happen to him? It's very hard to see.
I don't think so. And in terms of the Democratic Party's presidential candidates, or possible ones, I see that Gavin Newsom is top of is top of that. But I was speaking to Bernie Goldbach last week, and Bernie has a great background in the American military and one thing. He figures that's not a runner at all.
Yeah, I would I kind of agree with Bernie on that front, because if you look at the similarities with Newsom and Kamala Harris, both Californian Democrats. Yeah. Now, Newsom is probably more to the centre than Harris was, but in order to win a presidential election, you have to appeal to a broad cross-section of the US electorate. And I would look to figures. There are a number of governors there. Funny enough, the governors are probably more suited to running this current tranche of governors. Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan. Now she's 14-1 in the odds that I have here, but she is a very capable governor of Michigan. Josh Shapiro, we've heard a bit about him. He's a very good orator. Governor of Pennsylvania. And then you've other ones who have kind of been a direct conflict with Donald Trump. J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky. He's a centrist governor of a red state and has retained his position for 2 terms now. So that is, he may be feeling bullish about his prospects. And then there's a guy called Wes Moore in Maryland who has drawn comparisons to Barack Obama. Now, Barack Obama was a once-in-a-generation politician, I think, so it's hard to see how anyone can kind of emulate him. But they are all capable candidates. You have other ones thrown in there like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who people say maybe will she run. Now, I think she's way too far to the left. And that's not my personal opinion. I'm just saying if I was a Democratic strategist trying to win the 2028 race, I don't think she would stand up with a majority of the US electorate.
Yeah, isn't it amazing, and I think it's referred to in the notes, the spectrum of both the Republicans and the Democrats. In any other country, they would sort of diversify into other parties.
It is indeed, yeah, and that's, I suppose, that's the uniqueness of the two-party political system in the States.
The MAGA in the Republicans, a whole other...
Yeah, the Republicans have kind of subgroups. The MAGA loyalists, the kind of culture warriors, the kind of conservative economic types. So they're all in one kind of broad tent. The Democrats are kind of similar, but I don't think the Democratic Party is as big a tent now as it was. On social issues, I imagine you go far to find an anti-abortion kind of Democratic voter, even though they do exist. But generally they're liberal.
Are they not going a little more centrist to fight off the
I think they're tacking to the centre. I wouldn't read too much into the Mamdani thing in New York, even though he's a brilliant politician.
Yeah, but it is an exception, isn't it?
It is kind of an exception. It's New York, after all. It's a very liberal city.
Right. Let me take a break. We'll be back with Thomas. Let's go to China. And what's the latest there? Yeah,
a lot happening there. Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, visited last week, but he arrived in the midst of a period of controversy in terms of Chinese politics. Essentially, Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, has sacked or suspended two of his leading military generals. I mentioned this in passing last week, General Zhang and General Liu. And that is seen as a significant move. Like, I've heard people comparing it to the purges launched by Mao Zedong back in the 70s or the 60s. What he has effectively done there is suspended them on full of corruption charges. There is a corruption problem within the People's Liberation Army, which is the Chinese military, 2 million strong. It's a massive military. It's rapidly expanding with aircraft carriers. I think it's the strongest or the biggest navy in the world now, surpassing that of the United States. So he's suspended these two generals, but he's also launched kind of a more wide-ranging purge that extends down pretty much to the roots of the military and indeed to the Communist Party. And there's been a lot of speculation as to why he is doing this. Why now? Now, the answers might lie in the fact that, as I said there is a corruption problem and he wants to root it out. And Xi Jinping is very much a man of the people.
Yes.
Even though he does come from kind of Communist Party royalty, he's what's known as a princeling, which is a son of a Communist Party kind of forefather to a certain extent. So that's how he got his introduction to the party, and he obviously rose up the ranks. One of the generals he sacked is a fellow princeling, and apparently was on quite good terms with Mr. Xi. So that points to Mr. Xi's ruthlessness. So rooting out corruption.
And this purge, like Mao, does it go down into academia as well?
Yeah, well, it goes down into the roots certainly of the People's Liberation Army. I'm not sure academia specifically, but certainly Xi Jinping has no truck for dissent. He does not allow that kind of thing to happen. There is more speculation that one of the reasons he might be doing this is to maybe quell potential leadership rivals in the coming years. Now, he's 72 and many would anticipate that he will seek another 5-year term at the party congress in 2027. Now, Xi Jinping changed the rules of the Communist Party way back in 2018 to effectively allow him to serve indefinitely, to serve for life. So I don't think he shows any signs of letting up. But at 72, I suppose a successor might be beginning to emerge, but he's putting that notion to bed that it might be any of the military generals that are at the top of the military there. So,
and is there anybody at all?
Like I've actually consulted sources within China about this, and they say no. They say the Communist Party, for one, just does not leak. It is so kind of it's a black box essentially. And even if there were potential candidates, word doesn't really get out if there was potential dissent. Because I'd imagine if anyone was found out to be leaking, their head would be on a plate. It's an authoritarian regime at the end of the day. So I can see no sign of it. People can speculate from the outside, but within China, I think there is kind of there is ample support for Xi Jinping, all right, but there is no direct successor emerging.
And is there a sign that Taiwan is still in his sights?
Yeah. So the goal from a military perspective is to be ready to take the island of Taiwan by 2027, which is next year. Now, being ready doesn't necessarily mean they will act, and
Yes.
I don't think Xi Jinping would act in the middle of a Trump term or a Trump presidency, even though he's been lukewarm. President Trump has been lukewarm on whether the Americans would support Taiwan. But certainly China is, there's a lot of friction in that part of the world. There's disputes with Japan in the South China Sea, in the East China Sea. There's disputes with various countries. And then there's Taiwan in the Taiwan Strait. Now, I did listen to a podcast over the weekend suggesting that it would actually be quite hard to attack Taiwan, even though China's military, is way bigger. But it's positioned strategically, the island, you can look out on the waters and see any ships coming towards you. But I mean, it would be a seismic geopolitical event were Xi Jinping to launch some kind of...
But would it not be destructive to their economic ambitions, their global economic ambitions?
Yeah, it would. And you see, I mean, like, as I say, Keir Starmer was there last week.
Yeah.
The Taoiseach was there a couple of weeks ago. Mark Carney in the past few weeks as well. So various countries are looking to China now, given the uncertainty that's coming out of America. And obviously an invasion of Taiwan or any kind of predatory action on Taiwan would elicit sanctions, I think, from the international community. So China has to balance both.
Did I see over the weekend, is Trump rescinding tariffs on India now because they've agreed what? So that they wouldn't
agreed
purchase from China?
Well, that's Russian oil.
Oh, that's Russian oil.
To agree to stop their purchasing of Russian oil. So that's a coup for Narendra Modi. We spoke about him last week, and that was announced yesterday. And Trump has said we're approaching some good news in terms of the war in Ukraine. I heard him speaking about the death toll last night.
Yeah. But we've heard this before.
We've heard this before, and it's hard to conclude that it's anything other, until I see actual progress there.
Of course,
you struggle to believe it.
Tell us about what's happening in Hungary, because I'm interested in this. Is Viktor Orban, is he under threat?
Yeah, he's under pressure. There's an election upcoming in April, and he's trailing in the polls. He's trailing to a guy from his party who was formerly of his Fidesz party. His name is Peter Magyar. He's a kind of 44-year-old, charismatic, athletic, relatively young man who left Viktor Orban's party a number of years ago, effectively because of corruption concerns. And his whole mantra, or his whole raison d'etre, is fighting corruption. He's made that the centrepiece of his campaign. Now, what Orban, it's amazing because Hungary is a country, it's only a country of 9.2 million people, but Orban wields huge influence within the EU, the European Union, because of his...
He's a thorn in the side.
He's a thorn in the side because of his willingness to use the veto, and we've seen him block sanctions packages on Russia and things like that.
And finance for Ukraine, of course.
And finance for Ukraine.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that people in Brussels would be absolutely praying that this guy, Peter Magyar, might go and defeat him. And he is a very wily politician. He's a very skilled politician. Now, he will find it, even though he is leading in the polls, the system is effectively rigged against him. Analysts expect there to be kind of a free election in the sense that people will be allowed to vote, go out and vote, but not a fair election in the sense that the media is largely rigged in Orban's favour. You've almost state propaganda being blared out by the national broadcaster and on rural stations and rural newspapers, stuff like that. The whole environment, Viktor Orban and his Fidesz party have kind of twisted around in their favour. Now, Orban did enjoy, relatively good support up until recent times, but I think cost of living issues And the corruption thing, he has effectively enriched his cronies in government in Hungary, and the public, the general public, are getting sick of that. So it's one to watch. This guy, Peter Magyar, is a politician to watch. He leads, his party is called TISA, and they were a splinter party until he, a small party until he came in, took on the challenge, and now they're leading in the polls. So it would be a dramatic reversal for Viktor Orbán were he to do it.
When will we see that?
It's April, the beginning of April.
Oh, okay. Just a couple of things before you go. We always talk about Iran every single week. What is the story at this point? There's a warning from the Ayatollah.
There's a warning. He is Trump has suggested that they're coming towards peace or they're coming towards talks, and I think the Iranian foreign minister is due to meet Witkoff and a few others on Friday. But I followed the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Twitter or on X, and he posts these remarkably bellicose statements, and they're often reported by the media, accusing the US of sedition, etc., etc. Yes. Now, I suppose he's playing to his domestic audience there, but he doesn't seem to be toning down the rhetoric in that regard. But Mr. Trump did hint at a potential off-ramp in the past few days. My prediction may not come to fruition that America will strike if something happens within the past few days, but they've committed a hell of a lot of military resources to the region. I mean, there's an aircraft carrier there, there's various vessels there, and they have the capability to strike should they want to. And I still think Trump the last time they struck the nuclear sites, he had given Iran a 20-day deadline, and he struck on day 3. So all of this may be just bluster, and they may go in for a strike instead. Very hard to know with Mr. Trump, but tension's kind of still simmering there.
Right, but of course, if anything serious was to happen there, that's a tinderbox, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the Ayatollah has said regional war, to quote him directly. Yeah,
right.
So.
But I heard a piece with was it Jeffrey Sachs over the weekend that said, that's all grand, but I mean there could be a nuclear.
That is the thing. It does point out that the nuclear facilities obviously weren't destroyed in the attacks last year.
Israel as well. More attacks across Gaza over the weekend.
I mean, I suppose the news yesterday was that the Rafah crossing had been opened, and that was a hint of good news, a sign that the ceasefire had progressed. But there was at least 30 people, Gazan health officials
was
said.
that the bus that was attacked with the
I think so, yes, over the weekend. So, I mean, the killing goes on there. The reason it happened, Israel says, was that Hamas gunmen emerged from a tunnel in southern Gaza. But I mean, as long as that killing continues, I mean, it's an awful situation. But there are signs of progression. That is worth noting.
Well, hopefully so indeed. Thomas, pleasure as always.
Pleasure, Fran. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. And that's Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian with our global news slot. News and information is coming up.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.